The Emerald City has only been mentioned once in the story of One Piece, but I think I may have figured out why. I believe it was once part of the ancient kingdom, and that's why it only exists in legends. And trust me when I say, this Emerald City is not what you think and has no relation to the Wizard of Oz, but it does have to do with a different classic published by DC Comics and the movie The Green Lantern. In fact, I think the OP world ties also into the Matrix in some weird ways too. Just keep all that in mind for now, and I'll touch on it later. Now let's get started on something I'm almost positive you've never heard before. Before Roger died, he spent his last voyage with Odin and the rest of his loyal crew looking for the truth of the world to turn it upside down. That's one of the first things he said to Rayleigh when they met. I don't know what he meant by it exactly, but I assume he meant it in a way to fix the world because something was wrong with it, as the world itself has become something it was not meant to be, or at least not what it used to be. It's as if it's all just Roger's instinct, or a fragment of a memory that was passed down to him through someone else's will. I think that's a common instinct for the D-Clan. It's like they long for freedom and the destruction of the current system the world has in place. They instinctively know something is very wrong. Think of Roger, or better yet Luffy, like Neo in The Matrix, where Morpheus tried to explain it. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You've felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It's this feeling that brought you to me. It's that same feeling that most likely drove many pirates out to sea as well in One Piece. Does this all mean that the D-Clan and everyone else are like the slaves of the system, born into the world but instinctively knowing something's missing? Are Emu, Cypherpole, and the world government like the machines and agents that keep them enslaved? Is that why Luffy longs to be free? There has to be something going on like this, because in my honest opinion, Luffy is already free. He does whatever he wants, whenever he wants, so why does he want to become the most free so badly, if he's not imprisoned or enslaved in some way? I mean, he literally has the Nika Nika fruit, which saves others from slavery. And maybe eating devil fruits is like when Neo learned Kung Fu or Trinity learned how to operate a helicopter. What if devil fruits are just a download of data to the personal computer that is your mind? Could their reality be a simulation? A place that runs on willpower and what you believe in? Or a place consisting of different dimensions you can tap into, like the Matrix? Or maybe a little bit of both? I believe it's more like the world has been divided, not only by the red line, but also by erasing the existence of entire kingdoms, islands, and people by locking them into different dimensions around the world. Only the different races and kingdoms that separate themselves willingly from the rest of the world remained there after the Void Century, like Fishman Island, Zou, and Wano, for example. Places that are very hard to reach and are surrounded in mystery, you could say. What if they had no choice? Because if they had not done it, they might have ended up somewhere much worse. If one of the main goals of the Celestial Dragons was to segregate all the races on the planet and to create a hierarchy where they could rule at the top, then they certainly accomplished that goal. So potentially everyone is locked inside the dimension of a simulated world, and the ancient kingdom exists inside the real world. That's why Enel can breathe on the moon and why the Celestial Dragons insist they created this world. Because they did create it with very ancient technology. We've also seen something similar with Film Red and the idea of like people being inside the dream while others are outside the dream and connecting between the two. But going back to the point, the world was programmed to function that way, but at some point they lost the ability to change the code, and that's why they need the Mother Flame. The people are real, but the world around them is simulated. Maybe the Void Century was just a massive reboot of the system, and that's how all the information was lost. And maybe the poneglyphs are a part of the code for that system. And from Parvision's theory, it could have been called the White Sky Century. So what if that's because it was literally a blank slate because of some glitch? Shout out to Parvision, of course, links in the script. I do cover some other thoughts around this idea in an old video on Denden Kushi, which is the like inherited will as a cycle, and this script definitely catches the essence of that idea as well. We've already seen different dimensions with devil fruit powers, like Brulee's mirror dimension and the dimension between doors with Bueno. If Brule died, or Luffy or anyone else was stuck in there, then there's no way to get free. And even if someone else eats the same devil fruit later, it's possible that they would be in control of a different dimension, mirror dimension entirely, just like how we see Boa Hancock and the way her fruit works. If she died, then no one could free those turned to stone as far as we know. So here's where it all comes together and gets very crazy. Now that I've explained why I think the world is made up of at least 2 dimensions or multi-dimensions, we can get into the juicier stuff. Ever since we met Vegapunk on Egghead, there's been talk of dimensions, uploading data to punk records from their mind and wishing things into existence, for example. It already sounds so much like the Matrix, but what is actually real here? Because when York eats for everyone, it seems to fill up the other satellites virtually. They're not really full, but the signals in their brain tell them they are. Obviously that is relevant now because they've got her captured, so she might be able to control them in some way through that. So ultimately the point I'm making is that York and the other satellites, or the other satellites particularly, it's like a video game. They're just eating when it says they're hungry and it restores their energy. They're not actually gaining any physical substance from it. It's like if you're in VR, you're not really eating anything at all, and the food can just pop out of thin air by clicking a button on the menu. So I mean, we have this literally in Egghead with Vegapunk's vending machine and the hamburgers and stuff like that. Maybe the food was never real. Maybe it was just, you know, like some form of simulation or hologram that they could eat and they get energy from, similar to how the other satellites do it. And all of this would also fit what Luffy said to Kaido: I want to make this world a place where everyone can eat as much as they want. And if Roger and his crew found out they were living in a simulation, I don't blame them for just laughing until they cried. How would they even begin to fix that problem? To take it even further, if the ancient technology was actually an AI, but what if it pulled information from our world's history to create the simulated world in One Piece? Then it could be made up of nearly every religion, fairy tale, and myth that ever existed, which would explain a lot of the parallels between the Blue Planet and our world. And that would really connect our world with the One Piece world even further, and eventually lead to breaking down the fourth wall, which is literally what we're seeing with Luffy, right? Like with his ability. And then that would satisfy the line Kaido said about Luffy popping out of a picture book. I'm not sure how I'd feel. It's going to be pretty crazy and creepy if Luffy does talk to the audience, but we have recently seen it in the live action, right? So I don't know, maybe it's a touch from Oda that's coming. And also, what if when Oda started this story, he named the tech in Skypiea dials, because our real world internet was called dial-up in the 1990s before it was advanced, so which is when One Piece came out. Like, dials could have been some sort of the ancient kingdom's first technology, but considered an inferior version of the ancient weapons, or something like that. And just like in real life, Oda stopped using the dials and dial-up. Skypiea had tone dials, and we used to have dial tones. But yeah, that's another whole can of worms we can't get into right now. Anyway, right, now let all that sink in while I touch on the next part, and at the end it will all come together and you'll see exactly why I brought up sort of the Matrix and this idea of like a simulated state. Mindset and willpower are pretty much everything in the One Piece world, particularly in terms of energy. This is where Seraphim's blood and the Emerald City comes in. I think they all share something in common, which is the colour green. Just like in the Green Lantern, I believe the colour of will is green. It's possible there could be different colours of will, I guess, but in my theory, the strongest will is green. Maybe green is the colour, for example, of a dragon's will, which we know, like, dragons covet gold to make humans jealous, and jealousy is green. When we were first introduced to Dragon in the anime, the wind blowing through Logtown was green. Let's start with the wristbands anyway. S-Shark and the others wear. It's a device embedded in their wrists, and it turns their blood green as it circulates through them, and it's got lots of tiny bubbles. So what if Vegapunk extracted the will of a devil fruit by using Kuma's fruit, for example? Kuma could take the will straight from the person with the devil fruit power, or straight from their DNA, or just from the devil fruit itself if you wanted to, directly. This might be why the wristbands look bubbly inside. It's Kuma's little pore bubbles. They may be tiny bubbles, but bubbles all the same. He just took a tiny portion of the power so the host would not have to die. So, like, extracting some of it and putting it in someone else, which gives you this, like, bubbly look. Anyway, why do I think Will is green? Well, other than the Green Lantern stuff, we also have Brook, right? His soul appears green. As we've seen many times, when it comes out of his body, it can be different forms of green. Now, why would that matter? Well, his soul is the one with the devil fruit power that contains his will. The power wasn't left in his body at all. So now we know for sure what changes when you eat a devil fruit is your soul, which holds the memories, and will, which is green, according to Brook. Even Zoro, when he fought King near the point of death, gave off the green glow. Obviously, as demon ties to death. So, and he's associated with green hair. Maybe it has something to do with him carrying a piece of Joy Boy's will too, or just because that's the color of the most powerful will. In early One Piece, we were introduced to Mihawk, the strongest character at the time. He pulled up with a strong will, a black blade, and he had a green flame on each side of him. I'm sure some of you at least have questioned why his flames were green and not red. I definitely have, but that might just be me. Green is associated with not only a strong will, but it represents life, desire, greed, energy, could be associated with the forest god. Now, what if you had a bunch of people living together in one massive kingdom with the same kind of soul power or willpower? And what if the D-Clan, with their extremely powerful will, were the rulers of the kingdom living in its capital city? A will so powerful that it changed the environment around them and gave off a green glow. Well, then I would think that their capital would be called maybe something like Emerald City, and it would probably appear emerald or glowing green. Maybe this is the entire reason the anime took such a drastic turn the last year, giving the characters extremely bright glowing auras in Wano. It was all to prepare us for the Emerald City reveal made up of the colour green and the eternal will of D. I even believe that the will of the world itself supports the D-Clan, giving them the luck of the devil, luck being green. What if the Emerald City looked similar to the planet Oa from the Green Lantern? In that movie and comic, the Green Lantern Corps were mortals made up of all races. They fight evil with the aid of rings that grant them a variety of extraordinary powers, all of which come from imagination, fearlessness, and also the electromagnetic spectrum of emotional willpower, which is all green. It all sounds kind of familiar. I could even say that Trafalgar Law's secret name ties in seeing that Green Lantern Corps was for law enforcement. Also, even if the Emerald City isn't actually green now, it could still be named that because of the past or because the colour of the Eternal Will's flame. Just like how Wano is called the Country of Gold, yet we haven't seen anything like that there. And like Wano, the Emerald City could be closed off somewhere, maybe in a different dimension. A dimension that can't be accessed without reaching Laugh Tale. A world within a world, a place where the ancient kingdom's ancestors' dreams first began and pure freedom existed. It's their home and they always want to go back, instead of the world they are trapped in now. A joyful place where all the races were welcome, ideas and technology grew without restraint, where the will of D originated and everybody just got along, I guess. And if they can tear down the walls of that dimension, the world would be in one piece again. When looking into emeralds themselves, I did find that emeralds were the true treasure real-life pirates coveted above all else. They were extremely rare and were said to hold mystical powers that granted one the power to foresee the future. But in the end, most settle for the next best thing, which would be silver, gold, and other treasure. All emeralds are made of the mineral beryl, which sounds very similar to the OP currency berry or belly. It all points to the Emerald City being the treasure at Laugh Tale. So, in other words, I used to think of Laugh Tale as being beaches made of gold, but if it was beaches made of berries, it could literally be beryl, right? It could just be beaches of emerald. With the Emerald City locked away and its purpose lost, it might be the case that the flame had to be restarted, like reborn into the world. And it started out so small that it would take at least 800 years before they could reignite the flames again, or the flame would be strong enough to do its thing. Maybe that's why in Skypiea we kept hearing, "Light the flames of Shandora." It's a wish or a battle cry to bring back the eternal flames of the Emerald City. Luffy will be the spark that reignites them. Think of the Emerald City as being like Punk Hazard, where a Logi awakening changed the environment, but with the colour of will instead. But then its will and its purpose was forgotten for centuries. I'm sure the world government hoped the fires would be snuffed out over time, but even then, Noland, Roger, Ace and others carried a part of that flame, and as they died, they passed it on, and the will became stronger. Maybe that's why some of them could die with a smile on their face. So, to summarise all this, I believe the colour of will is green. Kuma is the reason the Seraphim have green blood, and Laugh Tale is the doorway to the Emerald City, which is locked away in some sort of different dimension, like Blackbeard's Dark Dimension, for example, and it's the real treasure Roger spoke of. They just needed Joy Boy to return because he is the key, the true will of D, and that will is the eternal flame that is passed on. Thanks for sticking around. This is all 3 Days Theory. I just literally narrated it, so if I said I, it meant her. So, and then she's doing special thanks to Keb, No Chill Dill. Can't wait to hear everyone's thoughts. This is 3 Day Trip Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and bye bye.